The only sound in the room was the struggle for breath. A faint, metallic smell hung heavy in the air, mixing with the low hum of a ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. The sheets were a tangled mess, the carpet was stained, and in the soft light of a bedside lamp, a young woman was lying completely still. Just moments before, it had been a perfectly normal, quiet night at home. They were two people in love, or so everyone thought. But behind the closed doors of that Raleigh home, something had snapped. It was a turn of events nobody could have predicted. When the police showed up, they walked into a scene so disturbing it would stick with them for years to come. And there at the door was the man who had called 911, his voice shaking, his clothes drenched in red. He claimed he had no memory of what had just happened, but the evidence was about to paint a completely different picture. Lauren Hughley and Matt Phelps first crossed paths when they were just kids in middle school, trying to navigate the awkward teenage years in their North Carolina community. But like a lot of childhood acquaintances, they weren't exactly close. They just kind of existed in the same orbit, and that was it. They eventually went their separate ways, with I Would Be a Baxon, lived their own lives. And for years, neither one gave the other much of a thought. But fate, as it often does, has a funny way of bringing people back together, sometimes for the best, and other times, tragically for the worst. Fast forward to when Lauren and Matt were both 26 years old. By then, Lauren had become a vibrant, ambitious young woman with a deep faith and strong family values. She was working hard, making a life for herself, and looking forward to the future. Then, completely out of the blue, she got a message she never expected. It was from Matt Phelps. After all those years of silence, he had reached out on Instagram, curious about this face from his past. Lauren accepted his follow request. Maybe she was intrigued, or maybe she was just being polite. But whatever the reason, she followed him back, opening a door to what would become a whirlwind romance. Matt was instantly captivated. He started scrolling through her Instagram profile, liking every single post, with each photo offering a small window into her life. There was just something about Lauren that fascinated him. He couldn't quite explain it, but he felt this powerful urge to know more about her. What began with a few casual DMs on Instagram quickly escalated to daily phone calls and non-stop texting. Lauren and Matt soon realized they had a ton in common. They were both huge nerds who were obsessed with Harry Potter and Star Wars. They could talk for hours about their favorite fandoms, laughing at inside jokes that only a true fan would get. Their conversations were easy and natural, and what started as just reconnecting with an old acquaintance soon blossomed into something much deeper, something that felt a lot like love. But there was another connection that drew Lauren to Matt, something she valued even more than their shared love for fictional worlds. Matt presented himself as a man of deep faith, someone who was truly committed to his Christian beliefs. For Lauren, who was raised in a devout Christian home, this was everything. God wasn't just important to her. He was the very center of her worldview, the foundation on which she built her entire life. The fact that Matt seemed to share those same core values made him seem like the perfect partner. To everyone on the outside, Lauren and Matt looked like the ideal couple. They seemed so genuinely in love, always finishing each other's sentences, sharing private jokes, and making plans for their future together. Friends and family who saw them were convinced they had found their soulmates. It felt like it was only a matter of time before Matt proposed, and sure enough, that's exactly what he did. But not everyone was convinced this was a match made in heaven. Dale, Lauren's dad, was fiercely protective of his daughter. He had always been her guardian, her protector, the man who would do absolutely anything to keep her safe. The idea of her marrying someone he barely knew made him incredibly uneasy. There was just something about Matt that didn't sit right with him, and while he couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was a father's instinct, a warning bell in his head that he just couldn't ignore. After Lauren and Matt got engaged, their families threw a big party to celebrate the exciting news. Lauren was absolutely radiant that day, in a stunning white dress, just beaming with happiness as she looked toward her future. But then, something happened that cast a strange shadow over the celebration. Matt's mother showed up to the party wearing white. Now, for anyone who might not know, wearing white to someone else's wedding is considered a major breach of etiquette. It's a calculated act of disrespect toward the bride, a clear signal that everyone at that party understood perfectly. Matt's mother was not on board with her son marrying Lauren. Lauren was, quite understandably, very upset. After the party, she confronted Matt about his mother's actions, expecting him to defend her and stand by her side. But Matt just brushed it off, explaining that he was raised mainly by his grandparents, not his parents. He claimed he didn't have a good relationship with his mother, and what she thought just didn't matter to him. It was a massive red flag. Lauren, however, chose to interpret it as a sign of Matt's independence, rather than what it likely was: his inability to set healthy boundaries, or to confront difficult situations head-on. In November of 2016, Lauren and Matt were married in a beautiful ceremony in Wake Forest, North Carolina. The wedding was a clear reflection of the couple's unique personalities, with their shared passions woven directly into the ceremony. A notable detail was the groomsmen, who complemented their sharp suits by each wielding a lightsaber. This created a truly memorable Star Wars-themed celebration. For Lauren, it must have felt like a dream come true, marrying a man who shared her interests, her values, her faith, and her vision for the future. Before the wedding, the pair had already moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, ready to kickstart their new life together. Matt got a job at an in-home care company, and he was fantastic at it. In fact, he was even named Employee of the Month. Lauren was incredibly proud of her husband's commitment and hard work. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. But Lauren's own contributions to their household were on another level. While Matt had one job, Lauren was juggling up to 4 jobs at once, just to keep them financially afloat. In addition to her full-time job at a Fortune 500 company, she babysat and worked in the church nursery, taking care of kids during services. She also ran a side business selling candles. She was an entrepreneur, ambitious and driven, always looking for new ways to build financial security for their future. Every single Tuesday night, without fail, Lauren and Matt would drive to her parents' house for game night. It was a weekly tradition the entire family looked forward to. Matt was always on time, and he seemed eager to spend quality time with Lauren's family, appearing to genuinely enjoy these get-togethers. He bonded with her parents and siblings over board games and laughter. To her father, Dale, and his wife, Matt seemed like a devoted husband who truly cherished their daughter. But behind closed doors, the facade was already starting to crack. Shortly after the wedding, the first real problems began to emerge. Matt grew increasingly uncomfortable with Lauren's close friendship with a male friend from church. He was utterly convinced this friend had a crush on Lauren and insisted their friendship was inappropriate. Lauren tried desperately to reassure her husband that he was just a friend and that she was completely committed to their marriage. But Matt just couldn't let it go. His jealousy, as it turned out, was rooted in a deep trauma from his past. Matt then revealed to Lauren that he had been married before. His first wife had cheated on him while she was away on a mission trip. When she finally came home, she coldly told him that she had never loved him and was leaving him. The betrayal and abandonment had left Matt an emotional wreck, and by his own account, he was messed up for a long time after that. While Lauren could empathize with the pain he'd gone through, she couldn't have possibly known that this trauma would soon manifest as increasingly controlling and disturbing behavior. As their marriage wore on, Matt's entire personality began to change. The upbeat, happy man Lauren had fallen in love with slowly morphed into someone darker, more withdrawn, and deeply depressed. He seemed trapped in a fog of unhappiness, and nothing Lauren did seemed to pull him out of it. Then, Matt stopped going to church. For Lauren, this was absolutely devastating. Her faith was the cornerstone of her life, the foundation of everything she believed in. She had married Matt in large part because he claimed to share those same beliefs. Now, he was refusing to even attend services with her, completely disengaging from this critical part of their life together. It felt like a betrayal, as if he had presented a false version of himself just to win her over. Lauren started to realize that Matt seemed to hold everything she valued in contempt. It was as if his love and respect for her had just vanished into thin air, creating a gaping void where their connection once lived. She yearned for the emotional intimacy they used to have, but Matt seemed totally checked out of anything that was important to her. Then, you had the whole issue with money. Completely running herself into the ground to provide some financial stability for them. Meanwhile, Matt got into a really disturbing pattern. He'd get a job, work for a few weeks, and then just quit out of the blue. This cycle just kept repeating, leaving Lauren more and more frustrated and totally overwhelmed. What made it even worse was that Matt was burning through their money at a terrifying rate. Lauren would work her fingers to the bone, bringing in a paycheck, only to watch it disappear as Matt made one impulsive purchase after another, and a series of awful financial decisions. She was building their life up, and he was a one-man wrecking crew. She was earning, and he was spending. Lauren's family tried to step in. They attempted to pull Matt out of his depression, offering him support, encouragement, and a helping hand, but their efforts were completely ignored. Instead of engaging with the people who cared about him or looking for professional help, Matt would just zone out for countless hours in front of the television playing video games, totally disconnected from reality and his responsibilities. Lauren finally reached out to her mother and sister, desperate for some backup. She laid it all out on the table, how bone-tired she was from juggling 4 jobs. She described the absolute heartbreak of coming home, after a grueling day, to find the house a total wreck. Laundry piled to the ceiling, and no dinner made, all while Matt was just glued to his video games, completely oblivious to her struggle. She was drowning, and her husband, the one person who was supposed to be her partner and her teammate. But Lauren refused to throw in the towel on her marriage, despite the massive distance growing between them, despite Matt's increasingly bizarre behavior and his refusal to lift a finger. Lauren remained all in. Divorce wasn't even on her radar. She had made a vow before God, and she planned on keeping it, no matter how hard things got. Then came the financial haymaker. One day, Lauren was checking their bank account when she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Matt had drained their entire savings account, $14,000, completely gone. This was money Lauren had worked 4 jobs to scrape together, money that represented countless hours of her time and sweat, and it had just vanished. When she confronted Matt about it, his response was unbelievable. He casually told her that he'd spent the money on a ring, not a ring for Lauren, not even one for himself, but a ring he bought for a woman he worked with, the very same woman he'd had an affair with before. Let that sink in for a minute. Well, he had shattered Lauren's trust, blown their life savings, and given the money to his mistress. Lauren was absolutely gutted, but still, she didn't give up. She decided to stage an intervention with her mother and sister to confront Matt about his spending and try to get their marriage back on solid ground. During that intervention, Matt actually seemed genuinely sorry. He put on a positive face and said all the right things about wanting to fix their financial mess. He seemed committed to making real changes, to being a better husband, to saving their marriage. For just a brief moment, Lauren let herself have a flicker of hope that maybe things could actually turn around. But on August 31st, 2017, everything fell apart. That evening, the same woman Matt used to work with, the woman he'd bought the ring for, suddenly showed up on Lauren and Matt's front doorstep. Lauren was shocked and absolutely seething. Things had seemed to be going so well after the intervention. She thought they were finally making some real progress, and now this woman was standing in her house. Matt then told Lauren he was leaving with this woman, claiming she needed his help with something. Lauren was beyond furious. She immediately started blowing up his phone with texts and calls, demanding answers, pleading with him to just come home. But Matt completely ghosted her. He ignored every call, every message, leaving Lauren all alone to stew in her anger and heartbreak. In her rage, Lauren reached out to her sister. She vented all her frustrations, telling her sister that Matt was systematically ruining her life. She'd finally had enough and told him they were through, confiding in her sister that she had officially ended things with Matt. That conversation happened on August 31st, 2017, the very last day Lauren Hugo Meyer would ever draw breath. Just hours later, in the pre-dawn darkness of September 1st, 2017, a frantic 911 call patched through to the Raleigh Emergency Dispatch Center. The man on the line was Matt Phelps, and his words were about to send a chill down the spine of even the most seasoned operator. "I think I killed my wife," Matt stammered, his voice shaking. "I had a dream. I turned on the lights, and she's dead on the floor. There's blood all over me, and a bloody knife is on the bed, and I think I did it. She's not moving. Oh my God, I'm so scared. She didn't deserve this." To the dispatcher, his voice was laced with what seemed like authentic terror and panic, a cocktail of shock and guilt. But was it genuine remorse? Or was this the calculated performance of a man who knew precisely what he'd done? Right there on the call, Matt began building his defense. He told the dispatcher he'd taken Coricidin, a common cough and cold medicine, and suggested he might have taken more than the recommended dose. His reason? He claimed he just wanted a good night's sleep. Now, for those who don't know, Coricidin is a standard, over-the-counter remedy for colds, but it's known to cause side effects like drowsiness, dizziness, and confusion, especially if you take way too much. Matt was essentially planting the seed. He'd killed his wife while lost in some kind of medicinal fog, insisting he had no memory of the act and that it was all just a terrible, tragic accident. Within minutes of that call ending, squad cars from the Raleigh Police Department were pulling up to the house. They found Matt Phelps standing on the front steps, where he was promptly taken into custody. As other officers moved inside to assess the scene, what they discovered in the master bedroom was the stuff of nightmares. Lauren was on the floor, curled in a fetal position, completely lifeless. The room was a canvas of violence. Blood was everywhere, staining the carpet, streaked across the walls, soaked into the comforter in the bed. For veteran officers who thought they'd seen it all, this scene was profoundly unsettling. The sheer volume of blood told a story of a brutal, frenzied attack and unimaginable suffering. Crime scene investigators soon arrived and started their painstaking process, photographing every detail, bagging evidence, and collecting samples. Their job was to piece together the truth of what unfolded in that room, one clue at a time. While they worked, another set of officers was tasked with one of the worst duties in law enforcement. They drove to Lauren's family home to deliver the news that their beloved daughter was gone. When they knocked, it was Lauren's mother who answered. The sight of two officers on her doorstep sent a wave of ice through her veins. She immediately asked if Lauren was okay. "Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been an incident," the officer said gravely. "Is she dead?" Lauren's mother whispered, already fearing the answer. "Yes, ma'am, she is." And then, the next question, the one a mother's intuition demanded, "Did Matt do it?" The officer's reply was simple and devastating. Yes, he did. The raw sound of a mother's grief echoed through the house, waking Lauren's sister. She bolted downstairs to find her worst fears realized. Police at the door, and her sister, gone, forever. Back at the station, detectives began to question Matt about his wife's murder, but he didn't say much before he lawyered up, a move that brought the interview to a dead stop. Investigators then took Matt to a hospital for a blood draw, aiming to verify his claim about being under the influence of Coricidin at the time of the murder. After providing a sample, Matt was transported to the county jail and booked on a murder charge. But for the detectives, the real work was just getting started. They began a deep dive into Matt's personal life, combing through his journals and all of his electronic devices for anything that could point to a motive. What they found was deeply disturbing. In the weeks just before Lauren's murder, Matt's search history showed he'd been obsessively researching coricidin specifically, its side effects, and the consequences of mixing it with alcohol. This wasn't the digital footprint of a man who made a simple mistake. It looked like the research of someone planning to build an alibi. But it got worse. Investigators unearthed a secret Instagram account belonging to Matt. The feed was a dark collection of posts about death, Satan, and the movie Times American Psycho *, a film famous for its protagonist, a wealthy executive who moonlights as a depraved killer. The posts were filled with violent and blasphemous imagery, which was a complete 180 from the public image Matt had so carefully constructed. Remember, this was a guy who was selling himself as an aspiring pastor, a dedicated Christian husband. But his secret life online was telling a completely different tale. And when the toxicology report finally came in, it confirmed Matt did have cold medicine in his system, but only a tiny amount, nowhere near enough to cause the hallucinations, or blackouts, he claimed. This was the smoking gun, proving Matt was fully aware and in control of his actions when he murdered his wife. Lauren's autopsy laid out the grim reality of what unfolded that night. She had been fast asleep on her side when Matt came into the room. He struck her once while she lay there, completely defenseless and unsuspecting. He then rolled her over and began a relentless assault on her face. The autopsy also told a story of incredible bravery. Lauren fought for her life. She had defensive wounds all over her arms, clear proof that she tried to shield herself from the very man who had promised to love and protect her forever. All told, Lauren had 123 stab wounds. 123, let that number really sink in. This was not a crime of passion, a brief loss of control, or some tragic mistake. This was a sustained, calculated, and savage attack. Matt didn't just take Lauren's life, he obliterated it. He stabbed her 123 times. The evidence painted an undeniable picture. This had nothing to do with cold medicine, and it wasn't about hallucinations or bad dreams. This was cold-blooded, premeditated murder. On October 5, 2018, Matthew Phelps pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in the death of his wife, Lauren Hughley. He received a sentence of life in prison without any possibility of parole. During the sentencing, Matt spoke directly to Lauren's family, offering what he described as remorse and regret for what he'd done. He called himself a monster, saying his actions were senseless and mindless, completely without any rational justification. But were his words sincere, or was it just another act from a man who had been deceiving everyone around him for years? Lauren's mother spoke at the sentencing, her voice filled with a mixture of profound love and unimaginable pain. Lauren was beautiful, inside and out, she said. The actions of Matthew James Phelps have forever changed me, forever changed. Because that is the devastating truth of murder. It doesn't just end one life, it shatters countless others. Parents, siblings, friends, everyone who loved the person they lost. Lauren's family will never be whole again. They will never get to see her smile again or hear her laugh, or watch her build the business she dreamed of, or celebrate another Tuesday game night, all of it wiped away by one man's horrific violence. So, what went wrong here? How could a relationship that seemed so loving on the surface end in such an unspeakable tragedy? The red flags were there all along. The controlling behavior, the jealousy, the lies about his faith, the financial irresponsibility, the secret affair, and the hidden Instagram account filled with violent fantasies, along with the sudden changes in his personality. But Lauren, dedicated to her faith and her marriage vows, chose to believe in the best version of the man she loved. She worked 4 jobs to support them both. She set up interventions to get him help, and she flat out refused to give up on their marriage, even when anyone else would have walked away. And that dedication, that faith, that love, it ultimately cost her everything. This case is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person you know is the one sleeping next to you. The one who knows your routine, your weaknesses, your schedule, the one you trust with your life. Lauren Hugo Mayer was only 29 years old when her future was violently stolen from her. She had so much to look forward to, dreams of launching her own business, a deep faith she wanted to live by, a family that adored her, and friends who cherished her. All of that was taken by the man who had promised to love her forever. Matthew Phelps will spend the rest of his life in a prison cell, and that's exactly where he belongs. But no prison sentence can ever bring Lauren back. No guilty plea can ever heal the trauma her family now lives with every single day. Lauren's story is a heartbreaking tragedy that never should have happened. It's a reminder to pay close attention to the warning signs, to always trust your instincts, and to remember that love is never supposed to hurt. Rest in peace, Lauren Hugo Mayer. You deserved a lifetime more.